Hello there, welcome to our Talent and Growth live webinar. Thank you for locking on today, whether you're tuning in live or if you're catching up on the podcast like so many people do. I'm Paul Church, I'm the host, I'm also the co-founder of the Anemo Group, and today we're going to be talking about candidate outreach. So we had a great conversation last week around job adverts and what they should look like and what they shouldn't look like as well. So this week I think it's a really nice organic follow on from that, and we're going to talk about how we get better at sourcing, attracting people, how we stand out in this really diluted industry and market that we're all in, and hopefully we'll all come away with some ideas of what good outreach should look like, and hopefully how you can maybe get a few more responses than you're getting right now. So got a great panel today. Really happy to have our three speakers. So I'll run around and ask for a quick introduction. So Claudia, would you mind just giving a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Claudia. I'm head of people at Happy Scribe. I joined as employee number 10. It's an AI bootstrapped and profitable startup. I actually do a lot of outreach as part of my role, and it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. I'm proud that we've got at Happy Scribe a response rate that's between 40 to 65%. So looking forward to sharing how we do that and what our approach is.
Wonderful numbers. Thanks, Claudia. Thank you so much. Simran, would you mind giving us a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Simran. I am based in Canada, in Toronto. I'm currently leading all things people and talent at Magical. I'm joined as employee number 14. Now I think we're at the 36 or 37. So really like owning and leading all the people and talent initiatives. If you don't know, Magical is a Series A startup. SaaS company really to automate and kind of kill your repetitive tasks through AI and just automation. So check it out, or we're available on as a Chrome extension. I'll pass it back to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much. An extra big thank you to join us today at 7 a.m. How many webinars have you done at 7 a.m. in the morning? I'm keen to know.
You're my first.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. And Kieran, welcome to Talent and Growth. Do you want to give us a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Kieran Rufus. I'm a talent acquisition partner at Treo. We're an automation integration company based in London and San Francisco, Series C, and ultimately I'm a talent acquisition partner. So I'm sort of on the front line, engagement with candidates on the day-to-day. And I'm sort of on the front line. So outreach is pretty much what I do on the day-to-day and my expertise level, I'd hope.
Fantastic. Well, good to have you. So Kieran, let's start with you, mate. So let's reverse engineer this a little bit before we start talking about what good outreach looks like. What does bad outreach look like to you? What is that? What symbolizes that?
It's a good question, and the way I sort of look at outreach myself personally is as a talent acquisition partner. I think I get a lot of emails myself from other agencies and other people trying to get hold of me for some reason or another, whether it be for a job that they want me to join or to use Trey as a business. So I always try to base what I think bad outreach is based on what I get given in my inbox. And I'd say for myself personally, I think one of the big things for me is generic spam type emails. I get multiples of them on a regular, and I'll sort of, before I even open an email, the long context, I'll be able to tell if it's personalized to me or not, or if it's just a generic email. And I think that's the first thing I'd like always address is if it's a spam email, generic, no authenticity and personalization, because I just know that they're not really trying to sort of get to me. It's just a sort of spam and trying to hit numbers and see who comes back to them. So that's where I'd start on that.
Yeah, absolutely with you on that. I think, I got one this morning asking me if I wanted a 45 grand a year talent acquisition job. You know, if you look at my profile, you can see I run a business. It might not be the suitable thing for me. So that person clearly hasn't looked at my profile, and that is obviously a spam message. So with you, Simran, over to you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, like too little, but also there can be too much information in one email for sure. The other things I've noticed is you can also tell when it's too automated. So with our sourcing tools, there's certain variable holders, and sometimes it can scrape like not the best information. So, you know, if you reach out to an engineer and it says, I'm really impressed about your Java experience when they only did it for 4 months, or it's actually not really relevant to the role. So it can kind of automate the wrong things where you should have used personalization or done a double check. So those would probably be my biggest mistakes that I can see people doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Claudia, what about you?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think part of what makes outreach bad is actually not necessarily the message itself, but not spending enough time actually looking at who you're contacting, just throwing some keywords in a search and randomly adding people and not really going through them one by one, because you might actually have a great email there, but if you haven't looked at who you're sending it to, it's not gonna land. And then besides what they've already said, I think also two more things. So the first one is word count. You can't be too wordy especially if it's like the first email. You need to write just enough information to intrigue and engage in curiosity. And then if you want to say more, you hyperlink it, and you let people explore it further. So you need to see it like a trailer. You can't put all of the information altogether. And then I'd say the other one is that it needs to be about the candidate you're contacting. So some outreach is just all about, the company. Obviously you are pitching the company and the job, but you need to think about how can you describe it so that it appeals to the candidate and what's in it for them. Why would they win something by engaging in a conversation with you or joining your company? So really thinking about it from their perspective rather than from what you want to tell them. And then the other thing I'd say is that the email subject and the first 15% of the email is the most important thing. I think we've all had the experience of getting an advert on YouTube, and I'd say we've only ever finished watching the advert instead of clicking skip on maybe 3% of adverts, being very generous there, but like some adverts were just good enough that we kept watching it. And with cold email, especially if you're reaching out to those top tier candidates, if the top 15% of your email isn't really, really strong, even if the rest of it is amazing, you've lost them. So putting a lot of energy into thinking about having a very, very strong start so that you can pull them in all the way to the end.
Yeah, absolutely love that, and I think that's a nice segue into talking about actually what the components of a good outreach message look like. And just before I actually go back to you, Claudia, on that one, just thought of one other bad experience I had from outreach, which was I actually interviewed when I was in recruitment agency days. I interviewed somebody for a job with me. I decided they weren't perhaps suitable to work with me. They joined another company. They then reached back out to me ask me if I wanted a web developer job. And then I thought, okay, right, so they've obviously made a mistake. They then actually did it again about 3 months later, and then they chased me on it. And I actually messaged them back. I said, I interviewed you for a job in recruitment. What are you doing? And they didn't reply to that. But that just stands out as bad outreach messaging. Just had a comment actually from Sarah, so I'll just chuck it up on the screen now. Have I hidden it? Oh. There we go. I think sometimes the message can contain too much sales attitude, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think we see that a lot. And I think that's about focusing in, really going hard selling on a company rather than actually thinking what does the candidate need and want. And that needs to be probably personalized. I absolutely agree, Sarah. And Claudia, if we go back to you, so you started talking a little bit there around, I suppose, what we need to include. So what are those components of good outreach that's effective and captivating, that can capture someone's attention? You talked about the first 15%. So do you want to delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So we've been using pretty much a similar structure to our cold outreach across most of the roles, and it's been working really well for us. So first of all, we start with the email subject. We do have a kind of go-to email subject that's been working quite well for us, but we also quite often customize the email subject if we see something that is is customizable from the person's profile. Sometimes people just don't have enough information for that. So our go-to one is want to help us make audio more accessible. So we use that. First of all, it's a question. Generally, people engage more when there are questions. Second of all, it's impact focus, which is something that is very attractive on the market right now. And it's specific enough that you kind of know what it's about, but it's not specific enough that you might be intrigued to go to the next step. And then the next bit is just really simple, like hi, first name, and then I'm name, comma, job title at Happy Scribe. And we do outreaches mostly either from me or from my colleague, the talent specialist, or it's from the two founders. And that's been working really, really well to do outreach from them. And it's literally just that. So name, job title, company. And then the next sentence is a personalized short paragraph that is about the candidate. So we're not talking about the company, we're not talking about the role, we're going straight into, hey, I noticed this specific thing about your background, that you worked at this company, or that you have this skill set, or you had this experience. And these specific things made me think that I'd love to talk to you about this opportunity here. And we've talked already about the importance of personalization. But it's really important that that personalization comes right at the top, because that's what I was talking about earlier of what's going to keep you watching the rest of the advert, because immediately they're seeing that you put the effort into actually reading their profile, that this isn't a spam, that you didn't just throw some keywords in a search and cross your fingers. You've actually contacted them for a very specific reason. And then the next section is a quick sort of introduction to the position, where we will mention something that's kind of like about the role and why we're hiring. So for example, recently I've been working on a product design lead. So it's something along the lines of the CEO saying, I've been leading product design so far, but it's time to get an expert on board. You'd be joining as the first designer in the team. So you get to set everything up and have a lot of impact. What do you think? And there we hyperlink the job description in the job title, so that if they're intrigued, they go and explore more, but we don't add more information. It's the trailer. Then we have very short paragraph about the company. We'll say we're a AI-focused transcription and subtitling startup. We're bootstrapped and we're profitable. We share a few figures about our revenue, our growth metrics, and our users, so that they have an idea of like, oh wow, this is real. And normally that's something that really gets the candidate's attention. And we really think about what metrics to share, so that, because we could share all sorts of things, we just share the ones that are most relevant. And then we share the closer, which is offering to have a conversation. But we also say, if you're not looking right now, I'd love to chat with you anyway, regardless of working together, to get your advice. And I'd say keeping that open is really useful, because you actually have a lot more conversations than you would otherwise if you keep it just focused on hiring. And we've received so much value from those conversations, both in like improving, getting ideas to improve our interview process, actually getting referrals. I actually ended up joining the company through an approach like that. I was jumping on an advice call with them, and then, here I am 2 years later. We got an advisor for product in that way. So I really, really recommend closing in that way.
Phenomenal blueprint. Thanks so much for that. I mean, there's so much there. I want to get the ideas from Kieran and Simran as well. One thing I just want to follow up on that, though, is you mentioned that your founders are sending out outreach messages, which of course is really powerful. For me, working in agency, if I'm getting a message from an internal recruiter, okay, but if I get a message from a founder of the company, I'm like, oh, okay, the founder wants me. So how are you facilitating that, and how does the mechanics of that look like in terms of how you get them to do it? Are you standing over them saying, right, message these 50 people? How are you actually doing it?
I ghostwrite it. So we use a tool called Gem, and first of all, I know both of them really well, so I know how to write in their tone of voice, and I actually really know what they're looking for and what gets them excited about a candidate. And we spend a lot of time going through that at the very beginning, so that, we look at profiles and I know exactly what they're going to notice about someone that's going to make them think, oh, wow, I really want to contact this person. And then when I go through the profiles, I use a tool called Gem that lets you have these scheduled sequence templates and then add a personalization. And then it has a feature called Send on Behalf of, where you can send on behalf of anyone who's signed up to the tool. So I will craft the personalization for them. However, they do still actually take the call. So in that, I think, I wonder, Simran, actually how your experience has been on this, because your company size is kind of similar to ours. But yeah, in this kind of stage where you're below 50 people, the founders are definitely still very involved in hiring. And especially when you're hiring those profiles that are kind of the first person in team X, they are very, very involved with the hiring and happy to take that first call. And normally how I divide it is that when it's a candidate that I have a hunch might jump on a call with me, I'll just do the first outreach myself. When it's a candidate that looks like they're really hard to reach, then I'll send the first one from the founders. The other thing that you can do is within the sequence, you can schedule, for example, the first two coming out from me, and then the third one as a follow-up from one of the founders. So most of the time, that's kind of the flow that I go through. I'll still send the first one and try to get on that call first, but then there's enough people that maybe don't want to talk to me, but do want to talk to the founders. So the third one comes from them, and then they'll have the call there.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. It's smart. And look, that tool, I know Trey using Gem as well, and so I'll be interested to find out a bit more about that. And I've had a little demo of it. It's a great tool. So that's a smart way to do it. I love it. That's great. Simran, what about yourself? How's it work for you? What's good outreach look like?
Yeah, I second everything and Claudia said. So I've been lucky enough to work at very fun companies and with a fun young brand. So like the subject line, I can have like a field day with that. So I usually use like, Bob, let's build something magical. And I've gotten really good feedback on that since it's fairly unique. But I really start by just thinking about, what makes this role and the company exciting? Like, is it the impact? Is it just what we're building in general? Is it the first hire? Is it the team culture? And then from there, I can personalize it. So like, again, like Claudia says, like that first paragraph better be pretty personalized. Otherwise, they're not going to make it down to the last sentence to see how it relates to them. One thing I started to do is, especially given the market, is just tell them what they need to know initially. Like, why would this person say no, and kind of beat it? So things I included in like the first, not the first paragraph, but maybe the second, quickly, like what we're building, our financials and our runway, because that could be a point of hesitation for people to respond at this stage. And our team of successful entrepreneurs. And then I just have like a little call to action, whether it's like, hey, do you just want to chat? Or I can even connect you to somebody on the team, just another engineer, something like that. So they feel less of an interview, but versus, hey, I'm just chatting. If it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. And again, then those second or third follow-ups, I would share more additional information, like here's some details on our culture, our values, and our perks, and link them as well if they want to go explore. And then another thing I started to do in the market, given how fast it's changing, is like once the sequence is kind of done, let's say after 3 weeks, I have another follow-up from a month from now, just given how things can change so quickly. In a month from now, they may be looking, but the sequence would traditionally end in 3 weeks. So I kind of wrap up the bulk in the three weeks, and then maybe a month and a month from a half, it just sends another message, just like, hey, just wanted to see how things are going. Because we noticed a big uptake after that is, people maybe had lost their jobs, or, there was a layoff, but they weren't impacted, but are considering to look now. So just having that like last touch, it has been really helpful.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Simran. Kieran, anything to add on all that?
Yeah, no, I agree with both, with everything they've said. We're a bit different at Trey. Obviously, the size of the business. So, with regards to co-founder status, typically we do use that. I'd say where we're as a business right now, we'll probably go more for engineering managers or the direct managers, and then maybe bring in the co-founders at the end. But again, that is sort of tactics that we would use as well. So, I completely agree. The only other things I'd say is obviously the standout subject. I kind of like to make it, when I speak to candidates and I'm sort of the outreach, I kind of make it as not as unprofessional as possible, but just like I'm talking to anyone, that's just a normal message. And I don't like it to be really salesy. And the lady who mentioned the comment earlier about, sometimes it comes across really salesy. When I speak to anyone, even when I interview people, I don't ever like to make them feel like it's an interview. It's just a conversation. And I think I try to come across like that with my emails and how I approach people. And I pretty much just get straight to the point and saying, before anything, I just want to let you know that this is directly to you. And I'll give them 3 reasons why it's directly to them. So they know that it's not an automated, being Trey as an automation service. People always reply to me saying, yeah, okay, cool. You've said it's about me, but you could just automate that through your software. So I always like to get to the point and say it's directly to them, because it is. And I hit them with what they want to know early. So pretty much job role details, salary bandings, depending on sort of the experience of the candidate. And then remote status. That's one I've found a lot recently, that people just want to know, is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it office based? And then visa sponsorship, all those types of things. So I just give them all the details early. And then from there, typically I'll let the other sequence stages do the rest. But everything they've said sort of covers it as well.
And Kieran, how are you going about, what's your blueprint? You mentioned the 3 things which are unique to the candidate you're reaching out to. So what's your blueprint in terms of that personalization of the outreach messages, which is still, I suppose, staying true to the employer brand of Trey?
What I usually do is, most of the roles we sort of work on, or I work on, are sort of the technical roles. So typically when I go into a message, I'll personalize it looking at sort of where they're currently at, and I'll read the projects they've been working on and how they're going to impact that at Trey. So for instance, if we had a front end role based on building a microservice or some component in React, I look at what they've been doing in their current role and how that would affect how they'd impact the role at Trey via what they've been doing currently, because obviously it's relevant. I'd also look at any sort of certificates, anything like that they've done, and sort of complement those. Ones especially I know that will be sort of really useful here if they've got an AWS certification. We use AWS here at Trey. So sort of mentioning things like that. And it just shows that you've sort of gone the extra mile to really look at their profile and look at the things they've been doing and how sort of the things they've done in their own time, like certifications and things, will impact their future. And I've taken the conscious effort to look at those things, because I don't think a lot of companies or internal people will do things like that. And it's, again, not everyone, but a lot of people do spam and just generic stuff. And when you do really sort of authentic things like that, I think it really does go noticed.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Kieran. A couple of questions have come in. So one was, what are your thoughts on putting hyperlinks in your outreach message? So Claudia, I know you said you do that. Simran, do you do that?
Yes. I think otherwise it's the only way. Otherwise, this message is going to be extremely long. And the good part of these tools is that you can actually see how many clicks they get. So if you're noticing no one's clicking your hyperlink, maybe you've got too many, or maybe it's just you double check the hyperlink that it's the right one. But you're able to see like open rates, and I think that's the only way you can do it without making it so long.
Got you. Same for you, Kieran?
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of hyperlinks. I think I could put hyperlinks in everything. Love it.
Yeah. Just one long hyperlink for you, is it? Okay, gotcha. And Claudia, these questions are from Paul Finnan at Sion, by the way. Hi, Paul. So I don't know why your name's not coming up on the screen. There was a question specifically for you, which is the GM outreach on behalf of founders. What is the typical increase in response rate from TA to founder? Actually, I thought that, and I forgot to ask you, so please do. Oh, you gone mute. Can't hear you.
Sorry. Just pulling up my stats on GEM so we can actually have a straight look at that. It's interesting. For example, designer, the designer role that I was mentioning earlier, I'm just looking now and it's actually exactly the same. So the response rate is 67% from the sequences that came out with me as the first person and with the founder as the first person. So I think maybe that goes to show that I'm picking well, like who, because I have some like certain criteria for deciding if I should do the first point of contact or the founder, and it looks like I'm picking that well. I'd say so. Yeah, it's actually, I think, about having that sense of who is the kind of person where it's worth putting the founder on the front line. So yeah, it's sorry that the data is not looking like enormously different enough, and the reason for that is picking well who to throw the founder at first. That said, I think where the difference is more significant is I think part of why my response rate is the same as the founders with that role is that he is in the third follow-up message from my sequence. I'd need to get back to you on the exact numbers, but for sure most people, like, that makes quite a big difference. So I'd say it's maybe like in the 20-30% range of people who will reply after that third message from the founder.
Got you. No, thank you for that. And just to add to that, I did a podcast last year of a lady called Tash Grossman, who's the founder of a business called Slip, and they had a big push on getting more females into the tech teams, and they saw a huge difference in outreach from her going directly to females than vice versa. So I think there's definitely some particularly if you're looking, perhaps if you're looking to increase diversity in certain areas of your team, your business, then looking at who's sending a message is definitely a key thing. Another question that's come through, I don't know, is this you again, Paul? I don't know why your name's not coming up, but it is. Interesting points. Doesn't the hyperlink push the candidate away from LinkedIn and your message? I'd say it should all be in part of the journey, isn't it? I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think it just gets them to engage more with your message, because in the end, your message and your LinkedIn, it's just it's not about the message in LinkedIn, it's about getting them interested in the content. And in the end, your message is the trailer and the content you're hyperlinking is the story. So you want them to go there, and if they're interested in that, then they are going to come back to it. So I definitely wouldn't be worried about that.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Right. So moving on, Simran, storytelling in crafting compelling outreach messages. So how much of that is a focal point for you when you're putting together your, I suppose, your original message and the sequencing?
Yeah, I think it's probably like one of the biggest parts of it is like your brand tells a story, and it's important to give a very good glimpse of it in your outreach, especially when candidates are getting a lot of outreaches. So it's kind of like storytell on the following again of like, what does your business do? What are you looking for? Is it impact? And how does this affect the business? And like why this person is really important. And get them excited about it. Like what's really unique for something like magical, and how can I communicate this in our messaging? So very similar to what Kieran said is like, I made sure our messaging was very similar to our brand. So emojis, empathetic, emphasis on diversity in groups and impact. And I opted to experiment with this rather than like I think we've all gotten the recruiter messages that are just like, I have a job opportunity. It's like 3 sentences and it's like, you have to respond to get anything more out of them. So I opted to kind of just share more and differentiate ourselves and make it fun. So that way, when they join or they chat with people, it's not like a bait and switch. I would hate to sound too corporate and they talk to us and they're like, oh, you guys are just like, if they were expecting something corporate, we're really not that, versus, if we sound so fun and then we are corporate, it's kind of a bait and switch. So I try to keep it very consistent of like what they'll experience in the interview process and when they join. So I think that storytelling piece is very important, just to kind of set expectations as well.
Great. Kieran, what about the storytelling? Storytelling, easy for me to say.
Yeah, I think it's a massive bonus. I mean, as a candidate, you want to sort of read how you're going to directly come in and sort of impact the role at hand. Especially if I was a candidate, that's what I'd want to know. So finding out about the project and what's currently happening in it and how exactly that person's going to come in and directly impact and contribute, I think is a massive thing. One of the big things I do at Trey is, and again, I mentioned I love hyperlinks, and I do. We're quite lucky at Trey that we've got a lot of good video sort of content that we have on YouTube and other sort of areas. So I like to use, and again, most of my outreach success has come from hyperlinking the videos. We've got one specifically called Life at Trey, which sort of gives you an idea of the culture and how things are from an engineering and product perspective in the London office. And then we've got one for the US in San Francisco as well, for sales, etc. So I usually put the link Life at Trey in my outreach and ultimately just say, hey, I've been waffling a bit here. Have a look at this Life of Trey video. Let me know what you think. And I think the outreach that I've been sort of getting and the response rate comes really well from the video link that I send, because it's not me just going on and waffling about this and please join us. We've got this and this and this. You can see it live on YouTube. And the video production team have come in and filmed the company and filmed all of the different engineers and people at the company to get a real storytelling piece from them and not just me.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's a really important point. And I think I suppose there's the question of whether you should include that link in the message, which I agree. So, but also if you go beyond that, companies who don't have that kind of content, you need to get it, because people want to know what it's like to work at your company, even if it's blogs. If you can't do the videos, then fine, do at least blogs. But I'm speaking to a company later on who have got a great brand, great product, good for the world, big focus on DEI, all this good stuff. There's nothing on the website about what it's actually like to work there, and they're missing a trick because it looks great, probably, but we need to be able to convey that. Love that. Thanks, Kieran. So, Claudia, so we're talking about personalization and how important this element is, and I think we all agree to that. How can we balance the use of automation as well to make our lives easier while still maintaining that personal touch? What are the things you do, and what do you think is okay to do?
So I'm going to give, again, an enormous plug to Gem as a tool for this, because for me, it's really the perfect balance. I know that some people are kind of taking it a step further and actually using AI for some of the personalization. I'm personally not a huge fan of that, just because in line with what we were saying earlier about the importance of actually looking at who you're contacting. In the end, once you're doing the effort of looking at who you're contacting, you will notice things that stand out that are why you're contacting them. So that's the work, really. So then writing the personalized sentence is just writing out what you notice that makes you want to contact them. So the reason why for me Gem is really the sweet spot in terms of tool is that what it automates is all of the sequencing. So you have the template where it has all those custom fields like first name, company name, and things like that. And then you'll have the template with the different areas that I was saying about the company, about the role. And then it has a Chrome extension where, as you're looking at the candidate's profile, there's a little box called reason, and reason is actually one of the custom fields. So what happens is that you will type your sentence like, hey, I noticed that you were the first designer at this company 4 years ago, and do you miss that experience and want to join a smaller team again? And then once I've typed that, that will be populated within the template where I had put the block for reason. So what that lets me do is write that email where, the only thing that I'm actually writing when I'm looking at the candidate's profile is that one sentence that's customized for them. And everything else is already there. And then I hit send. And then the magic is that, if the candidate doesn't reply within however many days I've set on the sequence, then it sends a second follow-up email that I have, pre-written with maybe some extra, a link to a podcast interview, just checking if you've seen this. And then it also automates the third or the fourth, however many you set up, with the option of, the send on behalf of. And before Gem, I was doing all of that manually, and it was super time consuming, but also really hard to get data. So now I can actually see all of the response rates, the open rates, the reply rates, the reply with interest or not interest rates, what people click on. For example, before using Gem, we were putting way too many hyperlinks. Thanks to Gem, then we were able to see actually everyone is clicking on just these two things and nobody clicks on the other one. So we're going to completely get rid of them, keep using those two hyperlinks that people are interested in, and disregard the rest. So it's a super valuable tool. Also, it gives you response rate information by gender as well. So you can check your messaging and see if maybe it's landing differently and you need to do some refining based on who you're contacting.
Yeah, love all that. Thank you so much. And yeah, we are singing the praises of Gem quite a bit. I was actually running a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and all everyone kept talking about was Lattice, and it's Lattice this, Lattice that, which is a great tool, by the way. Did they send me any money? No, they didn't, and I bet Gem won't either. Kieran, what do you reckon around in terms of automation? Anything else you'd add to that makes life easier while still keeping that personal touch?
I mean, yeah, I'm going to Gem, we're going to have to owe you some more money here, because we're pretty much the same as Claudia. We're using Gem at the forefront of everything we do. So I pretty much double down everything there. I think before I joined Trey, I was a data recruiter agency side. So I really hold on to the data piece. And I think finding out those specifics in the sort of automation of the data and what you're doing and how you can improve it, I think Gem's massive for that. But other than that, I'm sort of singing the praises of them as well. So I sort of double down on everything she said there. They owe you some brand money, for sure.
They do, don't they? Absolutely. I'm going to send this video to them. Simran, what about if we have a look now at how we attract a more diverse pool of candidates? How are we making sure that we're using the right language, the messaging is inclusive, while still being personalised, while still being authentic to our brand? How are we going to get that bit right?
Yeah, I think there are language tools, something like Textio will do a scan of job descriptions and just messaging in general. What I've done is also just have different people in the business, of different backgrounds and genders and race, have a look at the messaging. So for a while we were just going after non-male engineers, and I showed a few non-male engineers. I was like, what do you think? And so we already know, I think there's a lot of data on just you don't need to use the word rock stars and all those kind of things, right? And just kind of getting rid of it, and then what would be really important to that group that you're targeting. So I actually just say, run it by like the group that you're trying to target, and then actually go after where they live. So for example, when we were looking at non-male identifying folks, we went after a group called like ADA developer community, and that focuses on that. So really, it really landed well there, our messaging. But I think the first step is to make sure your job description and your messaging is very inclusive. And then talk about your value, or, show through blogs or etc. How that's important to you, and then go after that community or that group that you're kind of underrepresented in, and just kind of, you have to drive it home there and really do the extra research to get in front of like your community.
Yeah, fantastic. And Kieran, I know that, do you mind actually just sharing a bit around some of the metrics that Tray.io work to around attracting more diverse candidates, getting them in the pipeline? Because I know Reese has been on before and talked about it, but some people may not be familiar. Do you mind just sharing that, and then just what you do to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just going back to Simran's point there, just with regards to, I think what we do here at Tray in regards to the inclusive and sort of non-biased language is sort of find out from people on the front lines, so our engineers and people in the company who are diverse, and seeing how they sort of react to the messages that we're sort of sending out. Because ultimately, they're the ones that have joined Tray for some reason or another. So we like to use them as sort of they're on the front line for us to find out what they would give us advice. And as much as we're the talent partners and we're trained in all of this stuff, they're the ones that receive it. So I think it's always good to sort of use the tools you've got at hand, and that is the people at the company. With regards to metrics and for stuff for diversity, obviously we take it really seriously here at Tray. Again, GEM's really good for it. Again, this is the last time I'm going to mention GEM, but when it comes to looking at everything, it breaks down everything. So male to female sort of ratios, and it even goes further to sort of look at sort of where the person could be from. So whether it be Hispanic background, identifying as Black, a white person. So it sort of goes in granular detail. You can sort of really look at the elements you're sort of looking at and you're outbound. I'm not saying anyone has sort of unconscious bias, but essentially when you're looking and sourcing for profiles and you might be tired, you might unconsciously be sort of not really targeting the diversity that you should be from top of funnel. So with platforms like GEM, it really helps you to sort of get granular, look at the data that you've got, and look at the areas and sort of the different cultures and diverse pools that you need to target to more if the percentages aren't right in the sort of outbound you're doing.
Yeah, love it. Thanks, Kieran. And Claudia, I know diversity hiring is a passion point for you. Do you want to just share anything extra that you feel is important around this?
I actually just wanted to share a tip for anyone, because I think it's definitely in engineering a big problem, and I know that many people try to keep their outreach for engineering focused on women. So I just wanted to share a tip, which is that, and it's something that we tried that worked really well for us. So there's been a lot of research actually before, not necessarily on the job side, but looking at like getting more women to sign up to engineering programs, both in high school and a college/university stage, where actually the places that have had the most success in increasing that sign-up rate have done that thanks to reframing how they describe the program by making it more focused on impact rather than on technology. And so actually this is something that is really insightful, and we applied when doing engineering outreach, and we really saw made a difference. So for example, especially for our machine learning roles, before the outreach was very heavily focused on the technology, which is certainly an exciting side of it. But then we started making it a bit more focused on the impact. So, helping make audio accessible to everyone. And that really resonated. So I'd have a think about anything where in your company you can highlight, the impact that through technology someone can have on the role, because that does make it much more attractive. And actually, if you then go and look at, which companies have managed to attract more women in the team, you will notice that it is companies that have like a very, very clear social impact mission, for example, in healthcare or mental health or climate action, that there are much more female engineers in these kind of sectors. So it really highlights that trend of, changing the language to get them to sign up from the education stage actually does translate when they're then looking at, where to go and work next.
Yeah, thank you so much. Fantastic. I want to talk a bit about, I suppose, creative ways to target passive candidates or potentially people who aren't even thinking about looking. Just before I do, obviously we're talking about Gem a lot, which I know is based on messaging. If I'm right, it's messaging people on email rather than anything else. I know I'm on LinkedIn right now, but how are we feeling about LinkedIn emails? Kieran, if I could ask you that first of all, and actually before you answer that, I just want to load that, is that I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but LinkedIn has now changed things. So there's a focused inbox and like I can't remember what the wording is. There's two inboxes everyone's got now, and basically an in-mail from somebody who's not a connection will go in this separate folder. It's the other folder. I'm just looking at it now, which essentially would be your spam folder. So you're not going to go in that thinking there's going to be anything good in it, because whereas before emails came directly to everyone's inbox. So for me, I'm questioning my LinkedIn recruiter license these days. I'm thinking, it's just not worth it, is it? But Kieran, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's a bit of a game changer. Specifically for me, what I usually do is when I'm sort of doing my sourcing, I've got like a template which I'll always add a note to, and I always try and connect with every candidate that I'm going to outreach to. So they're going to get an email from me from my outreach, let's say via Gem, and they're also going to get a connection from me via LinkedIn. And in that, we'll just say, hey, saw your profile, wanted to chat, popped you an email. Would love to chat either way on LinkedIn or email. And it's just so they're getting more from an agency side. When I used to be an agency recruiter, it was all about touch points. And you're going to get a touch point from me from email. You'll also get one from LinkedIn, and you might get another one from me from email. And soon enough, you're going to see my name enough to want to reply, even if you tell me to go away. So I sort of do that. With regards to LinkedIn emails now, again, what you just mentioned there with regards to the two outboxes now, it does change things. And for me, it wouldn't be worth it just on that basis. But I do think that the adding notes to LinkedIn and connecting with them, because when you do the connection, when they accept your connection, it goes then into their actual inbox. So that would be a way to curve that, I'd say, is if you're not going to LinkedIn email them, LinkedIn message them a note when you connect with them. And then once they accept that, if they do, it will then go into their normal inbox opposed to their spam one. Unless LinkedIn have done that as well, which means to sort things out.
I don't get. I mean, they're trying to sell LinkedIn recruiter licenses. I'm going to get thrown off it, aren't I? But they're trying to sell LinkedIn recruiter licenses, but they've just downvalued that main part of it. I don't understand it. I'm guessing something else is coming. Simran, LinkedIn, are you using emails at all?
Yeah, we definitely didn't get the full license at Magical, just given the cost. It's with all of the sourcing tools, it did make sense. But I did get Recruiter Lite, and where I did have good success with it was not engineering roles. It was more marketing and design roles. I had a very good response rate on LinkedIn. And for anybody that didn't respond, let's say after a week, I would put them through a Gem or I was using Ashby by the end of it, our ATS to do sequencing as well. But I would do an email from me, and then a week later, maybe it's from our head of marketing saying, hey, our head of people and talent, Simran sent you a message in case you missed it. Basically, here's the sequence, right? So it's almost like a double touch point, just a week later in case they didn't see my email or, they didn't get back to it. But I find it works still well for non-end roles, but you could also live without it and just go straight to your normal tool. I probably wouldn't buy a normal seat again at that cost, and especially with the focused and non-focused part of it, it makes it a bit tricky.
Yeah, gotcha. And Claudia, just quickly from you, LinkedIn, yay or nay?
So I genuinely despise LinkedIn Recruiter, and every time I renew it, I have like a super long conversation with the sales rep who probably hates me, and I send them a document like this long from Notion of like everything that really isn't working. I just feel like they ship features without really speaking to recruiters, because frankly any feature that they've launched in the past year and a half hasn't added any value or has made it worse. So I only use InMail as a very, very last resort if I haven't been able to find their email address, because absolutely, as Simran is saying, there is some types of roles where it's very hard to find the personal email address. And I only contact people on their personal email just because I'm not really a fan of contacting them on their work email. We did it sometimes and we received enough like unhappy feedback that we just thought, no, it's really like a no-go territory. As Kieran was saying, actually, what I'd much rather do rather than send an in-mail, is send a connection request. And then I can send that both either first from me. If they don't accept it, I'll send it from one of the founders or someone else in the team. And actually that connection request will have the same kind of personalization that I would have used to put in that, top 15% of the email outreach, so that they're still seeing like a genuine specific interest. And that has actually worked really well, especially for design or with some of the roles where they use LinkedIn more themselves, like sales or marketing. Also because in mail, besides now this new thing of like going into the separate inbox, it doesn't have anywhere near the features that it should have. For example, it doesn't let you automate sequences. So until the person replies, you can't send follow-up. It doesn't give you accurate response rate data, because it only gives you response rate by project, or by role, by project only if it's linked to a specific vacancy. So it's really bad at collecting data. You can't hyperlink anything. So normally my workaround for that is I'll send the regular message, and then at the bottom I'll put links, and then I have like different hyperlinks, and I put them like at the very bottom so they don't get in the way. But yeah, there's many aspects of it that just aren't really suitable as an outreach tool, and it's messy and time consuming and not data driven. So that's why I only use it as kind of a last resort. And I have had some great conversations with people coming from that, but it's definitely not my go-to tool, and I do heavily resent the pricing of it, because I don't think I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. Well, if I disappear off LinkedIn, then you know why. I've been virtually assassinated by them. Question just from Alice Gibson. Just any tips around getting email addresses if they're not on LinkedIn? And I, by the way, Claudia, I absolutely agree with you around the personal email addresses. Don't want to send it to their work emails. That's bad etiquette, I think. So I absolutely agree. Any tips around this, Kieran? Any ideas on that?
To be fair, we use. I feel like this question is set up for me to say it again, but I feel like whoever you ask this question, they're going to say the same thing. Gem has a way of sort of finding, and sort of you can request premium emails, which will sort of pull its data from other external sources, and then they'll sort of be able to find them within 5 working days typically. So there'll be candidates that, let's use Alice for example, if we downloaded her profile, it'll come up saying no email address found. You can request premium emails, which would then sort of take it externally away to find it somehow. Typically it comes from, she might have uploaded her CV on the job board at one time. They'll pull data from any sources where they could potentially find it. And they use probably the power of AI to sort of find and locate that. It's been pretty good for me, to be fair, in the past, but I'd say that's the main way I sort of find email addresses, other than sort of asking them directly on LinkedIn if they sort of reach out and say they're happy to sort of have a chat.
Yeah. I think there's Talent Ticker I've used that does it. LinkedIn Helper does it. So most of these third-party add-ons, they have some kind of web crawling tool, Alice, for getting email addresses. So I hope that helps, and I hope you don't actually work for Gem and you just teed that question up. Right, I'm conscious of time, so I want to go on to the next question then, if we don't mind. So Simran, have you got any creative techniques for finding and engaging passive candidates who may not be actively searching for new opportunities? So this could go beyond. Just to kind of give more context, I think this could go beyond just an email or a message. Is there anything else you feel you do well, which helps engage new people?
Yeah, we recently did a referral jam. So for us, our size works. We got everybody, especially the Eng teams, on a call, and we did some searches together, and we just built this whole like Excel sheet. And then later I kind of went through and just kind of marked everybody up and assigned like, does it make sense for me to send the message, or does it make sense for Bob on our engineering team to send the message because they're a first or second degree connection? So we've done that. Local meetups, I think at least in Toronto, there are like JavaScript meetups, and really like passionate people about this kind of technology go there. So that's a great place to like kind of, get in front of your target audience. Something else that we've done in messaging that has actually worked really well is like, if you have the means, kind of offer something creative. So we started offering like, hey, we'll donate, $20 to a donation, a charity of your choice if you just like have a chat with us. And that actually got a really good response rate, even if it's for the first like call, right? And it worked really well. And the other one we did was offer an AMA with somebody on the team or a head of department. So it's like, hey, might not want to chat with me, don't phrase it like this, but like if you wanted to chat with Greg, our head of engineering, and it kind of offered as a time of like they get to ask you all of their questions. It's less about us interviewing them, but any hesitations or questions they have about it get addressed either way, right up front. And it's like less pressure of an interview. So I find those tactics have really worked. And I think we've done some more creative ones, is like, we've got our CEO to hold up a sign of like specifically to them. We've done some, those are more for like we really want this person and we know they'd be awesome, but they're definitely might not respond if it's just generic. So we've done some weird things, but I would say those 4 have actually landed pretty well with us.
I love that. I think there's a couple. I really like the idea about donating some money to charity if they have a conversation. That's just win-win, isn't it? That's
who's going to say no?
Exactly. Yeah. What, you hate charity? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. And Sumad, just quick before I go on to the other, ask the other 2 around this. In terms of the sourcing jam, do you just break down how that looks? What you get everyone to do, just so we can understand about how that looks?
So obviously everybody doesn't have like a recruiter license. So we literally just got everybody right, like engineer and women or something in their search bar in LinkedIn. They hit enter and then you just filter by first and secondary connection. Lucky for us, like Magical will actually, if you open up their profiles, it would actually just get all the data and throw it into a Google Sheet in one click. But really, like, you basically just need their links if you had to get anything. And then I would go through and mark it as in like, yep, hi, like this meets most of our requirements based on the profile, or like medium, but I'm still going to reach out because they might be a fit that I can't tell based off their profile just yet. Or I know in 6 months from now, we're going to need an intermediate engineer. So just kind of like, it's basically kind of just like a network list. So that's kind of how we did it, was just searches in their search bar, because it works just as well. That's the other plug. If you don't want LinkedIn Recruiter, you can just use the search bar and do some great searches.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. Kieran, anything innovative you're doing to get different conversations going with new people?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think one of the big things I do is sort of form nurture campaigns, what we call them. And pretty much I'll reach out to some people who I know they might have just recently joined their company, and I'll just sort of mention how I'm not trying to sell anything, just really like their profile. And if they ever decide that things aren't right for them where they are, I would love to have a chat. And then I'll sort of create a sequence from that where I might offer them a trade demo to our platform 2 months later or a month later, just to carry on just being, again, I touched on it earlier, but the touch points and just continue to be in their mind in some capacity. And again, just dropping little things like that, a demo, the video that I mentioned, the Life at Trey, and just things like that. And or if we just had some Series C funding, just little information pieces or market things that might be useful for them, whether it be to Trey or their current company, just like things that are just going to make them realize that it's not just me trying to just get them to join Trey for my numbers, and it's a sort of more of a long-term thing. And the other thing I'd say that we do here is things like tech challenges, specifically for products and engineering. So we'll host things like maybe like a hacker rank or something, where sort of they'll have to get in teams of sort of 4 or 5 people within their friendship groups or their companies. And sort of there'll be sort of a hacker rank to do with a prize for the winning team. And ultimately, that's nothing to do with us sort of currently sort of trying to hire. It's a case of that we're doing these things for the community, where they're going to look in the future and be like, you know what, where was a good company that was doing things for the community, even if they weren't looking to hire? Oh yeah, Trey was doing that. Now I'm looking to interview. Let me look at their website and see what they're hiring for. So I think things like that are also important. But I say nurture campaigns and just giving candidates things that aren't just come and work for me because I need you to. Things that are going to benefit them in the long term, and ultimately the long term they'll remember you for that, I think.
Do you want to just and you don't have to say it, I know Jem does this really well, but in terms of the actual nurture campaign, how does that look? What are you sending out to people? How long? Do you want to just break that? I mean, how long between engagements? I mean, do you want to breaking that down?
Yeah, I'll give an example. So sometimes I'll be sourcing for candidates who I think are really good, but I'll see that on LinkedIn they've just joined a company 1 or 2, 3 months ago, or maybe even 6, 7 months ago. And I know realistically they're not going to be looking to move unless something drastically bad's happened. So I'll probably just reach out to them initially just to say, hey, seen you've joined the company. Hope things are going really well there. Just would let you know that if things ever change and you decide to move on, obviously within tech, the average sort of lifespan of a candidate is like 2 years at a company, typically, just from data. So if anything changes in the future, I'd love to have a conversation because I really admire your profile. I'd still keep it personal with regards to some of the things I like about it, but there's no pressure. I'm always happy to have a coffee or a chat anytime you're ready, but just would let you know I really like your profile for the future. And then I'll probably leave it a month or two. They might reply to me saying, yeah, thanks, I'll keep it in mind. Then I'll just have a sequence which will go out in a couple of months saying, hey, I know I've reached out before. Just wanted to keep you in mind, saying that if anything changes in the future, have a look at this trade demo for the platform. You might not know what we do. So here's a demo for free. Just have a go on the platform. It's a cool tech platform. You might enjoy it. A lot of the people I deal with specifically love tech. So when you sort of give them free demos of things that they're going to help automate their lives, ultimately they'll have a go at it. And even when I do that as well, I think it's important because I'm not just trying to sell them the role of joining the company. They might look at the trade demo that I've given them and then speak to their team about it. And ultimately, sort of then that might be a use case for Trey as a business to then go into their company as an automation tool. So I'm sort of killing two birds with one stone there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it from there. Other than that, I'll sort of leave it. And unless they come back to me and say, yeah, do you know what, can you contact me in 6 months? I'll then put a reminder in my diary specifically for that person. But I'll just try and keep it really blank and empty canvas for them to sort of create conversation with me on.
Wicked. Thanks for breaking that down. Claudia, anything extra you're doing to kind of get those conversations going with people who might not be ready to have a conversation right now?
Yeah, so we've been doing something that has been working pretty well. It's certainly something that has like a strong on-site bias. So Happy Scribe is like an on-site first company, and we organize monthly afterworks, where quite often when we reach out to someone and they send like great feedback about the company and sort of the product, but I'm not looking right now, we invite them to the next after work. And so in that way, I've actually made friends through this approach. So it's a good way to just like build connections, so that you become seen as like the go-to great company with a great culture, and it kind of has a knock-on effect because people come, they see the team, they kind of fall in love, and then next time first of all they're going to talk to their friends about it, and it's actually starting to have a knock-on effect where there's been a few times where I've contacted people and they heard about us because somebody went to one of our parties and they loved it and they had a great impression. So I think when you have a really, really strong team, you can kind of show it off at an event where it's like, look, this is the people that you'd get to work with here and the kind of experience you'd get to have. And I guess it's kind of a bit an employer branding strategy that has, a long-term ripple effect. But I'd say compared to when I joined Happy Scribe, almost nobody in Barcelona knew that we existed or who we were. Whereas now I definitely think that's changed. And connected to that, I also think, we've put a lot of work into actually doing some PR and sending the founders to be interviewed on some of the key podcasts that people listen to in the Barcelona tech scene, and just making them a bit more visible. And I know it sounds a bit indirect, but actually that does make a very big difference, because then when you reach out to someone, even if they're not interested right now, they're more likely to remember you if they heard one of your founders on a podcast that they like, and it just helps them stay in touch more. And then also it means that you can use that content in a nurture campaign, because it's always good to add more value, as Kieran was saying. You have something to share that's interesting, so it just generates content that you can add in a nurture campaign, and it maintains that relationship.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think there's some great stuff all three of you have given there, so thank you for that. And I think what's also really important, and this isn't always necessarily something that TA can control, is you need absolute buy-in from the people on the top, that you need a long-term strategy around talent attraction, because none of this stuff works if they're just saying, right, get me someone hired this month. You've got to be saying, well, if we do this, we're going to hire some good people in 9 to 12 months, and so you need to be working for the right kind of people. You need to manage those stakeholders, probably with some data to help support that as well. Final questions then, just before we wrap up. Anything else? I'll stay with you, Claudia. Anything else around how we can leverage social media platforms, online communities, just to enhance sourcing and connections? Anything you'd like to add to that at all?
Oof, I'm not on basically any social media, so not the best person to ask. However, I definitely say for engineering, Twitter is a great resource. So we have kind of plowed through lists of people's Twitter followers, and that's been really useful. So I'd start from that one, but definitely social media is not my strength. So I'll maybe hand over to other people.
No problem. Simran?
Yeah, I'm definitely not using like Instagram or TikTok yet, but Yeah, very similar to Claudia. Like I've gone through Twitter followings, and there's some people that are just extremely active on certain topics, and that's a great place. And likely they're following or have followers that are also talking about the same thing. So it takes a bit more time, but they have knowledge about the topics that you're looking for. The other place we have done, but not great because you can get kicked out, is Discord. We've gone onto Discord channels and message people there. Because again, very active and passionate about what they're chatting about. There are Slack channels, like I'm a part of like Toronto Loves JavaScript, Women in Tech, Product Marketing Alliance. Like those are all great Slack channels. It could be like a simple post of like your open role, or you can actually monitor the channels and find your most active members and message them as well. So it takes a bit more time and just kind of like monitoring and nurturing there, but they're usually pretty much subject matter experts on the area you want. So I think it's worth it.
Fantastic. Kieran, finally with you, last but not least, anything around social media and online communities you'd like to throw in there?
Yeah, I think pretty much with regards to sort of Twitter, Discord, those are the two that I was going to say as well. So I completely agree there. I think spinning the question and how to sort of stay relevant on those social media platforms from a company or attraction perspective, I think constantly providing good materials to the candidates is one of the big things. Obviously, I'll just use the tech example because it's what I'm closest to, but tech updates, salary surveys, market/competitor information, all of these good things. And it comes back to the nurture campaigns. If you're sort of giving candidates information about competitors for their current roles and things like that, it's things that will stand out and you're differentiating yourselves and you're just going that extra mile for them. So I think those are some of the big things. I think LinkedIn, especially nowadays, is turning into such a social media type environment where companies are leveraging it like it's TikTok or like it's people are influencers on there now. So I think as social media continues to advance, so these things are just providing good content. And one thing I do on LinkedIn, which again, my company allow it, but some might not. I always try to be myself on LinkedIn, and I'll sort of, the way I type and everything I do, nothing is corporate. It's my account. I own it, and I'll sort of just be me on there. That's not to say I'm posting pictures of me having a beer with my friends on a Friday night. But I'll try and just be as genuine and unique as I am. And I think that gets a lot of buy-in, and people just want to see genuine people, and it's not trying to influence and trying to get brand deals and things like that. So just constantly providing good materials, be yourself, and do your research on what people want to know. And I know engineers love tech, so just give them what they need.
Yeah.
You're saving the beers on the Friday night to your TikTok account, right?
Yeah, I'll keep that for Snapchat and all those other things.
Fantastic. Listen,
can I just add one final thing on that? Because the question was
Go on.
about online communities. I just wanted to say we've actually had really good success with IRL communities by sort of identifying which are the ones where the people that we would love to work with hang out and are part of, and inviting them to the office to host their next meetup. So we've done that for product, for design, for women in tech meetups, and that's worked really, really well in terms of just getting people to know about us and a few applications coming through as well.
Thank you for adding that in at the end. Thank you so much. Well, listen, I've had a great time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to be going back and actually listening back to this because there's so much useful stuff here, which is going to help me with my outreach, and hopefully everyone who's listened as well. So thank you to our three speakers. Thank you for locking on today, whether you're tuning in on a webinar or you're catching us on Apple or Spotify on a podcast or whatever, however you've engaged. Thank you. I will see you next week. Next week, we are talking about, what are we talking about next week? Something good. I can't remember what it is. We're talking about something good though. So with that, I'll let everyone go. Thanks to the speakers. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.